Verbal processing difficulties.
Yeah.
Don't worry, I do this all the time. I was on clocks thinking. Who would just do what I did? Yes.
Like,
Sorry?
not in a bad way, but like controlling, like you have to control things.
Masking.
I guess.
I mean, would you care to expand?
I just think like you, like, I guess I'm using the wrong word. So like hyper focused.
Oh, definitely.
Controlling is not the right word.
Which goes back to what this lady was saying. We did. No! Okay. So, now here's a bit of an official explanation. So it refers to the natural differences in how brains function, process information, and interact with the world. There are people who think neurodivergence also includes conditions such as OCD, Tourette's, bipolar, things like that, and others who also think that it includes really any mental health concern. However, for the purposes of this presentation, when I talk about neurodivergence, I'm talking about ADHD, autism, or ADHD, which is ADHD and autism together. Fun fact, according to the DSM, which is the Diagnostic and Statistic Manual, prior to 2013, you could not diagnose ADHD and neurodivergence together. You had to pick one. 2013, not that long ago, 9 years. Apparently I don't exist. Shocking. So ADHD often shows up as, and again, this is just a very brief overview. There's lots more, but as challenges with focus, impulsivity, and managing tasks and functioning. Autism can look like differences in how someone communicates, processes sensory input, or engages with routines and patterns. And ADHD combines these in fun and new and interesting ways that contradict each other. Super fun. So, I guess the next question would be, sorry. There we go, yeah. Another question. Have you seen signs of ADHD, autism, or ADHD in your communities?
Yep.
Yeah?
Yep.
Okay. Does it look like what kind of Western society says it should?
No.
Sometimes. Not all the time. Right? Yeah. Okay. So, now, imagine layering some of the stuff that we've discussed onto the unique experience of Indigenous communities. Cultural and environmental factors influence how neurodivergence shows up and is understood. For example, behaviors like deep focus on storytelling or sensitivity to environment might align with neurodivergent traits, but they can also be valued in Indigenous cultures and traditions. These cultural nuances can make it harder for neurodivergent individuals to be recognized through Western diagnostic frameworks. And here's where it gets even more complex, because we talked about intergenerational healing, but you can't talk about intergenerational healing without intergenerational trauma, unfortunately. So, the legacy of intergenerational trauma. Colonization of residential schools didn't just strip away language and culture, they created cycles of trauma that are still being felt today. This trauma impacts how individuals and communities experience mental health, often compounding, exacerbating, or masking neurodivergent traits. Because something that a lot of people don't realize is that trauma also impacts executive functioning. So if you've had trauma your entire life, it can be a real fun game of, is this ADHD, trauma, or both? We'll get to that later. So for instance, trauma responses like hypervigilance, emotional dysregulation, or shutdowns can look a lot like ADHD and or autism. Instead of being seen as neurodivergence, they're often labeled as anxiety, defiance, or simply bad behavior. This overlap can leave people undiagnosed or misdiagnosed, and that has consequences. Not just in terms of accessing supports, but in terms of how we see them or they see themselves. For years, I thought, I'm a broken horse. I'm a broken horse, I'm a broken horse, I'm a broken horse. Why can't I connect to the fucking herd? Turns out, I'm not a horse, I'm a zebra. connect. I look like a horse, if you don't know what you're looking for. But I grew up thinking, I'm a broken horse because I can't connect. What is wrong with me? That is why labels are important. If you want one, it can be beneficial. If you don't need one. When people say, why do you need a label? Everybody wants a label nowadays. Because when I had a name to put to what I was struggling with, I was able to start trying to figure out how to not fix it, but fix the environment to make it suit me. So, fun little game, neurodivergence or trauma. So, do you think this behavior could be related to neurodivergence, trauma, or both? A child who has difficulty with transitions and frequently shuts down. Both. Correct, both. An adult who avoids eye contact and prefers structured routines. Neurodivergence, correct. A community member who struggles with emotional regulation and/or addictions. Both. Yeah, exactly. Okay. So misdiagnosis is all too common. Indigenous children, for example, might be labeled with pathological demand avoidance, what used to be called ODD, which is oppositional defiance disorder, has now been kind of, well, still called that through the DSM. They've now recategorized it. Some people with pathological demand avoidance or persistent drive for autonomy. A bit more of a positive spin. What they're actually experiencing is sensory overwhelm or difficulty regulating emotions due to ADHD and or autism. They might be misdiagnosed with anxiety, depression, bipolar, or BPD. I don't think BPD actually exists. Or something else where the underlying cause is actually undiagnosed neurodivergence. There's so many people that have come in and seen me, and they were like, I was diagnosed with anxiety, depression, BPD, bipolar. They're like, I was on anti-anxiety meds, I was on depression meds, nothing helped. They get a diagnosis of ADHD and or autism. Now, do those other things go away? Sometimes not. There's usually a diminishment, whether they're medicated or not. It's not a cure-all, but it is an explanation. So, there are also the barriers, right? Access to mental health services is already limited in many Indigenous communities, as we've discussed. You have on reserve, it's hard to get access to people coming into community. If you're off reserve, there's also battles of like, well, can I access the services through Jordan's Principle, NHP, things like that. Somebody who's like, I identify as Indigenous, but I don't beat the blood quantum to be able to use NHP. That would be me. Fun stuff like that. So, and culturally appropriate care is even rare, as we've seen, as we've talked about, right? So clinicians often lack the training to see how neurodivergence and trauma intersect in Indigenous populations, leading to further marginalizations. The impact of these missteps is heavy. It leaves people feeling isolated, misunderstood, or broken. When you don't know why you're struggling, or worse, you're told it's your fault, it adds another layer of harm.